And welcome to part 13, where we will be making a new entity. This is the last entity we're gonna make before we'll start with a menu system. If you want to make more enemies and such, go ahead and do that. Make some textures and make some entities. We'll be making a tank this time with some animations inside animations. With the barrel on the tank is going to aim at certain positions on the screen with a sine wave. Always sine waves. I love sine waves. So let's get going, shall we? We need some textures. That's usually the first thing I do when I want to make things for a game. I make the textures before I do anything else because it's fun to make textures. So here we have a tank. And notice that the tank do not have a barrel. It's just a futuristic, fancy red tank with a little antenna on the back. But since we want the barrel to be animating on itself, we want to make another image of. It's the easiest way. There are other ways, which I probably will be covering in future tutorials, but this is the easiest. Takes a little more memory, but it's the easiest. So, drag and drop into the textures folders. You can download this in the description, as I've said hundreds of times by now, but I'm gonna say it every time, as far as I remember. We're then going to make a new entity file, which is going to be called tank, originally enough. So tank.lu. Yes, of course I want to change it. What the hell? There we go. Okay, this tutorial is going to be a long tutorial, but we'll go through the whole process again of making an entity. This time pretty covered. First of all, as in any other entity, equals ends derive the base entity that we made in the previous tutorials. The load function. Okay. First of all, set the position. Self set position, which is going to be the position that we wrote in the load function. And then we need to load some images, right? So we all know what function we have for that. That's self image underscore barrel. We'll load barrel first, which is going to be love graphics new image textures / barrel.png. I hope so. Barrel. Yeah. And we just copy paste. Image will be the tank. We also need a smoke texture. In the next game, if we make a next game, which I probably will do, we will have a texture loading system, so we don't have to load several images again and again. But for now, simplified game. Let's make it simple. So we load images again and again. Not optimized, but you know. That's the way of learning. So the speed, the self speed value is going to tell how fast the tank is going to be. Self smokes will hold the smoke textures. Smoke entities, if you want to call it that. Size, this time we'll use a float value for the size and not a higher value and then divide it, which is more optimized. So with this version of the size value, it will divide the size by 4. Self barrel angle equals 0. Self distance, this is going to be the randomized distance from the screen if you make several tanks at the same time. Just to make it a little more dynamic. Delta, you'll see what we'll use this for. Self, let's make another space. Exploding, for obvious reasons. If it's exploding, then do some cool stuff. Explosion equals 0. Self-health, of course, equals 20. Self-max health equals self-health. Yes, I think I did everything right now. If you see a typo, scream it out. I won't hear it, but at least you tried. Sure, why don't we just write it in case we need to edit it? You never know. Self x equals x, self y equals y. Function and get barrel rad. Okay. In the love engine, we have to use radians to set an angle. Normally, you might also use angles. The love engine normally detects that, but use radians. It's much better. I think I just love them. So to get let's call it angle, not in degrees but in radians, we return self barrel underscore ang times math dot pi times 0.1 minus math dot pi times 0.1. If you don't understand what radians are, just go ahead and Google it, and you will probably understand it better than I managed to explain it. This is just some gibberish values that I've tested to see if it looked cool, and it did. It did. So just trust me on this, guys. And go ahead and edit it in the finished script to understand it better. Tweak some values and such. Function get barrel position. We also need to get the default, no, the custom position of the barrel. Return self x, self.x, comma, self.y plus 16 times self size. Yes. So that's gonna get to the position of the tank, which will be right in the middle of the tank, because we're gonna use some offsets in this image of the tank. So the barrel start, the start of the barrel should be in the middle of the tank, and the Y position should be a little bit in front of the tank, so a little bit in front of the middle of the tank. So the middle of the tank plus 16 pixels times the size of the tank, since it will scale down if the tank is smaller in general. I think we'll just go ahead and do the draw function then, since we're already on the theme. Function and draw. If self-exploding, then do some crazy shit. For example, love graphics set color and the whole thing times. And do you know what we will time it with? It is the explosion value. Right there. So this explosion value is going to go from 0 to 1, depending on yeah, it's probably going to take about 1 second. So when 1 second has passed, the explosion texture will be gone. The explosion is going to be a circle. I just love circles as explosions. They work so nice. So simple and nice. So fill self X, that's the middle of the tank, self Y is the middle of the tank. See how easy it is when we use offsets, which you will see soon. Explosion times 512, since that will be just enough, fast enough and everything for the explosion to expand, and 64 segments, so a 64 cornered shape. That's just about round. At least it's going to be hard to see any difference there, any corners. We do the same, so we just copy the color function here to make it fade out. Then we're actually going to code the tank drawing right now. So local barrel x, comma barrel y, just call it bx and by, equals self get barrel position. Remember, in the get barrel position function, there we go, we returned two values. Notice here, return self x and then a comma and then the y position. We have to do the same when we're getting these positions. We have to use commas between the values that we want to use. Local just means that the values are only visible inside this if loop. So when it hits an end after this local thingy, it will not be readable anymore. So between the if and the end, or the function and the end, or the for loop and the end. All depends. You'll learn this slowly but surely. You'll see. Love graphics draw self image underscore barrel. Remember, we want the barrel to draw in the background, in the back of the tank, so we don't see the start of the barrel like on the outside of the tank. That will be very silly. Quite so. Bx, by, the x and y position. Self get barrel rad, if I remember correctly. Yes. And of course we have to scale the barrel and self size times 0.75. I decided that the barrel looked a little bit large for the tank, so I downsized it a little bit. It can always be done, but preferably the image has to be scaled in correlation with the picture of the tank. So the barrel and the tank should be in the same size really already on the images. So we don't have to do it in-game, because that takes a little processing power. Love graphics draw self image self x self y 0. Don't think we need to do much here. Yeah, just scale this schnitzel. And we're gonna offset it. And remember, the tank picture size, there we go, is 512 wide. So we have to offset it by half of it to get it in the middle of the screen, the middle of the position. So 256 and 128 in the y direction. And that should offset it pretty darn well, you'll see. So the position of the tank will be in the middle of the picture, basically. And then we just return, because when it's exploding we don't want it to draw the tank again. So, for awesomeness reasons, we'll just copy paste the whole tanking drawing thingy down here. Because remember, when we're exploding and then returning, this whole function just stops running. Only this code will be run. This actually, inside the function. Anything after return is ignored. So if it's exploding, it returns. If not, then it just ignores all this and goes here instead. We can't use the explosion thingy here, since we want it to be totally visible when it's not exploding. And then we want to draw the smoke screens. So smoke in pairs. We've done this before, as far as I remember. Do local s equals smoke. No, yes. Smoke time divided by 3. Love graphics set color, the normal thing, s times 255, and the last bracket. Love graphics draw self image smoke x smoke y minus yeah, 1 minus s times smoke speed, since it's going to ascend. Self size times smoke s, of course. Self size smoke s. And what's the last one? Of course, we just add some zeros here and there. And let's see. Then we're gonna do the update stuff. 1 second. Just need some drinks. Okay. And update. And always remember the ends. Those are important. If self exploding, then end. Self explosion equals self explosion plus delta time. If self explosion is larger or equal to 1, then destroy the darn thing. Destroy self ID, and an awesome end at the end, and return, of course. Nothing else has to be done when we destroy something, when it's exploding, basically. If self x is larger, no, smaller or equal to self distance. Oh yes, of course, I mistakenly said something silly about the self distance function. I meant to use this value, I mean, to randomly tell the tank where to stop on the screen. So they all don't stop on the same line. They should stop at different distances from the left side of the screen. Ain't that jolly good? So when it's right on the distance that we set, make the x speed speedify. He has to move when it's not yet at the distance that is desired to go to. Destined. Whatever. Self delta plus dt. If self delta is larger or equal to a half, the delta function, I forgot to tell you about that, where I said I would tell it later, is the time between each dust cloud that is made when the belts move on the tank, right? So we'll simply use the smoke functions for this. Just edit it a little bit. You'll see how we edit the smoke generation function later. So in our smoke function, we'll first have the x position. Yes, the x position times self size. This is going to be the position relative to the tank. So minus 200 pixels from the middle of the tank, and 80 pixels self size from the middle of the tank. Half there, you'll see what this is, and math random 4,16. A random number between 4 and 16. You'll see. And when we've created a dust smoke thingy, make the delta reset to 0. If we're not before the distance that we're designated to go to, but we're just about, like right before it, so over self dot distance and self position is smaller or equal to, need to check my notes here, because it's getting pretty advanced after a while. There we go. Self distance plus 50. And then, so if he's over the distance he's designated to stop at, but less than 50 points after it, 50 pixels after the distance from the left side of the screen, he shall roll a bit, since tanks rolls a little bit when they stop, which looks realistic. Self speed times 4, we increase it a little bit. 1 minus self exposition divided by self distance plus 50. So it's like a percentage of how far he has rolled, times delta time, for obvious reasons, plus 4. It's just a value to speed it up a little, because I thought it was really rolling very slowly, so I just increased it a little. Self delta equals self delta st. If self delta is larger or equal to 1, then self delta equals 0, and you know what? We're gonna fire. Notice that I get a colored text there. That is because I have the Garry's Mod add-on installed on my Notepad++ program. You can download it too if you want to, but it's not needed. It's just for looks. And now we're gonna do the brains for the smoke, and it's just the same as the Zeppelin in the previous tutorials. So we'll just copy paste the code, and I'll hold the camera at the code, so you can type it if you're following me while typing, which could be hard, but I guess you learn a lot because you actually write it with your bare hands. Or you just download the goddamn thing. The code, I mean, works. And oh really? Did I just write that? Did I just write that? Yes, I did. Okay. Yeah, that's right. The barrel angle value should actually follow a sine wave. Yes. The fire function. To fire a bullet. To do this, we need a get barrel rad. Local X and Y, you guessed it. Get barrel pos. Local bullet. We're actually gonna make an entity afterwards, which is going to be a bullet. Equals ends. Create bullet. X plus math cosinus. If you haven't had about cosinus and sinus, just bear with me. So this is basically going to calculate how much to the left and right it has to go, depending on the value of the barrel. The bullet has to spawn just about on the end of the barrel to look realistic, you know. So we'll use cosinus and sinus to calculate exactly where it should spawn, depending on the angle of the barrel. A times 200 times health size. Whoop-de-doo. Kind of false, because we don't want it to draw in the background. And then we're gonna use a function which we're gonna add to the bullet entity. Set velocity. Math cosinus A times 400 math sinus A times 400. That should give it just enough punch to look like a cannonball, or a large bullet. Will look kind of heavy, you know. Function and damage. Oh yes, we need a tank to be destroyable, or else we'll just lose the goddamn game. So if damage is less than 0, or self-exploding, then return enter. We don't need it to do anything then. And smoke, a normal smoke dot, as I called it. Math random. 128 times self size. 128 times self size. And we'll just copy this math random equation function thingy there, and just change it with 64 here. This way the smoke cloud will, the smoke dot or whatever, will randomly spawn on an area which covers just about the image of the tank, so it will look like it's getting hit at several spots. At different spots each time you shoot it. Self health minus n. Add score 1 when you manage to actually hit it. If self health, then. And we have yet to make the sight and stuff for the gun we're actually shooting with, or a cannon. I guess it's a cannon now, since we're using such large vehicles. There we go. So set health to 0, explode, and add some score. That should be it for the damage function. Function and explode, which we just used. We'll just set the exploding value to true. Function and die, as you remember, is needed for the function to actually be destroyable, or to actually take damage. So make a new tank each time you kill the previous one. False. Just some numbers to spawn it outside the screen. A guy in the previous video asked how you would go ahead and spawn an entity inside the screen. Instead of having the minus value here, just make it plus. This is basically pixels from the top left corner. First one is to the right and left, so minus is left, plus is right, and down and up, where down is positive on the next value. And now for the last function in the tank entity, which will be ent smoke. This time we will have an X position, Y position, a scale, I think, and some speed of the whole thing. Let's just return ent down here so we don't forget it. Okay. If not X, then X equals 0. We're just making sure that everything is plotted in before if we forget something. X, Y, S, and speed. And the same here, X and Y. There we go. Just in case. Let's make the default speed to 64. And the default scale to 1, of course. Table insert self smokes. Nested table time, as you can see. Time equals 3. This is the time that the smoke will exist. X equals self X. We've done this in the previous tutorial. Y, I guess. Plus Y, of course. Damn. And plus X. So we get the offset here that we put in the smoke clouds for the belts. And speed equals speed, I suppose. Yeah. I think we're gonna go ahead and control S that. And open the game folder again. Now we're gonna make the bullet entity. just to have that done and out of the world. So bullet.lua. We can use this bullet for several applications later, for new enemies and such. So let's make it a little usable for other stuff than just tanks. So I hope you've done some simple physics in school, like how gravity works, the mathematical equations for gravity and such. Or else this will just be gibberish, but it can always be gibberish. So, as any other entity, let's make it derive the base code. Function load, and load that is, with x and the y value. Self, blah blah blah, set pos x and y, self r. Would you look at that? What the hell is this? That's the size of the bullet. Self velocity. I think that's written correctly. I hope so. Velocity will be a vector. A vector, I mean. With an x and a y value. So a two-dimensional vector. Self inertia. Is that the correct word? Inertia. No. Inertia. There we go. Sorry, I'm Norwegian. Don't kill me. Set inertia n. This will be a it's maybe not the correct word to use, but it's going to be the dampening of the bullet. How slow it will fly through the air. Update. Self x, oops, self x. Self x plus the velocity of the bullet. Same with the y, so we'll just do some copy pasta here. Damn it, why can't I just copy pasta? Why you no copy pasta? Self velocity, we need some gravity, right? Velocity y equals self velocity y, and I've calculated it to be 128 times self inertia and times the delta time, so it will fall just about the same speed in all types of computers. If self y is larger than 600 or self x is larger than 800, this way it will tell just about when the bullet is outside the screen. The bullet will always be fired in the right direction, so we don't have to check if it's outside on the left side or up in the air, because we want the bullets to be able to travel upwards forever and then fall eventually. Everything that goes up must come down in this game. And destroy. May notice that I used a new function there. Take score. We're gonna make it soon. A very simple function. You probably know how to make it yourself already. If you do, go ahead and do it and see if we do it the same way. Set velocity x and y. As you can see, making a game is a huge job. Imagine how the hell they make Crysis, for that matter. Jesus Christ, how much coding it has been done. Or Battlefield 3, for that matter. Or a game engine. Jesus Christ. Why? Return self velocity x. Self velocity. Sorry I haven't been explaining the functions I've done, but I guess you see that these are obvious functions. I just to set the velocity and get the velocity of all the bullets. Pretty simple stuff. Oops, deleted some ends there. And to draw the bullet, very simple. We're just gonna draw a round circle, which is black. Why not? Love graphics circle. Damn it! What am I doing? Circle. There we go. Fill X Y. Yeah, R 8 and the end, of course, and return end. Okay, the bullet entity is complete as far as I can see. Now for the easy stuff. We have to register the entities. Always remember to register the entities in our registration thingy thongy. Very easy. Tank instead of Zeppelin. Tank. Bullet. Bullet. I guess we could have made some fancy system that just reads the files in the entities directory and loads them automatically for us, but simplicity. Simplicity. Always a good thing. Oh, of course. We need to be able to shoot the tank. Shalt not forget that. So, if it's a tank instead of a Zeppelin, so let's make an else if statement here. If it's a type of Zeppelin, no, it's not the type of Zeppelin. Then, if we just copy pasted here, put some else in front of the whole statement here, and change that to tank. If it's a tank, then local hit equals inside box and all that. This is going to be quite a hard one actually, since we made the center of the picture the position of the tank. So we'll have to think little here. Inside box, the X and the Y position. Yeah, of the mouse, and then enter the X position minus half of the image, half of the image, of course, because the tank doesn't fill the whole texture. So as you can see on the little image here, here's the middle, and the tank is just about the middle of the left side of the half side of the image. So 128 pixels back from the middle and 128 pixels right from the middle should be sufficient for this hitbox. So, and size and Y. Yeah, since the Y position will be yeah, right on top of the tanks here, since it's the middle of the picture. And the size has to be, of course, half of the image to as the width of the hitbox, and 128 as the height of the hitbox. That should do it. So if we hit the hitbox, if hit, then we don't need to print hit this time. Let's remove the previous one because we know it's actually working. Damage, knock on the table. Damage 2. Okay. Then I think we're done in the entities file. Oop. And I think it's only the main Lua we need to do some tricky stuff. Of course we need to spawn a tank, so we can actually test this tank. Let's just make it minus 250. No, let's just make it 0. Just for debugging purposes, and halfway, a little over halfway of the screen. And false, we wanted to draw in the foreground. Of course. And we have to remember the new take score function instead of add score. We do take score and just minus the score we have. And let's not make it able to do a minus score. That's just silly. So if score is less than 0, then make score 0. Let's be friendly. So let's try to run the game and see what we get. An error, of course. Okay. at in the tank file, line 4. Let's have a look at that. Oh yes, silly me. Remove that little mark there. Always hit that button for some reason. Okay, let's exit and open it again and see if we get an error now. Tank 83, unexpected symbol near the bracket. 83. Oh, yes. There we go. That should do it. Control S. Let's try to run it again. Get barrel pulse and nil value. 52. Get barrel pulse. Oh, of course. Right. I wrote the function with a large letter. Silly me. Why didn't you warn me? Watchers. Okay, it seems like it's working. Okay. That's a jolly good tank, I must say. Yes. Looks really nice. It's knocking about with its barrel. Let's see. It stops. Does it start shooting? Yes, it shoots. Look how awesome. Shoots like a god. Ain't that awesome? And let's try to get some score and see if the bullets are actually removing. Yes, it's removing the score when it hits the end. So we really have to take these tanks out to gain some score. Ah yes, I like this very much. This is awesome. Okay, let's end it here. And let's make the menu system next time. If I don't figure out anything else that is needed before we do that. But I think we'll go for the menu system next time. And I'll see you then. Remember, comment, like and subscribe.